weeks to go before the local elections. Politicians campaigning hard across the country, but there are some problems that they're dealing with as well. But I'm joined now by independent political analyst Wayne Sussman. Wayne, thank you very much for your time. That piece we've just heard, it suggests a level of jadedness on the part of the voters, saying, oh, you only need us for the vote, but nothing ever really changes, in a sense perhaps that the smaller parties or even independent ward candidates might get more power. What do you think?
Well, when we go and vote on election day this year, the ballot papers are going to be much longer than usual because you're seeing a lot more newer parties, smaller parties, independents putting their name forward and wanting to take on the more established and larger parties. So on the one hand, there might be voters who are jaded, but the trajectory with local government elections is different to that of national and provincial elections. I think more and more South Africans see the value of participating in local government elections because there's a direct bearing on their lives when it comes to service delivery. So I'm hoping that that trajectory of more South Africans participating in these elections will continue in 3 weeks' time.
Is it good or bad news, the growth of independent candidates? And I think we've got something like 1,700 independent candidates, which is the most we've ever had, I understand. Is it good that the smaller community-based parties, but also the independent candidates, good for democracy, or bad because, of course, it can chip away at the bigger parties and may end up bringing us very rocky coalitions that sometimes don't get much done?
It's a great point. I think independents and regional parties and smaller parties are good for our democracy. I think giving voters choices are very, very good. However, when it comes to coalitions, it hasn't been so good. You've seen small parties often hold larger parties to ransom, often obstructing larger parties and their agendas. And I think after these elections, even though I think a lot of South Africans who've experienced coalitions are not happy with them, are going to have to live with the fact that there are going to be far more coalitions because of the growth of regional parties and some independents and local parties after the elections in 3 weeks' time.
Do you see a further chipping away for the ANC? You know, it was quite shocking for them in 2016. They lost control of quite a number of the metros. Do you see that erosion continuing or not?
The ANC had a very good run when it came to by-elections from after the elections in 2019 and certainly in 2020 when we started having by-elections after being in lockdown. However, the ANC's momentum has seemed to come unstuck after the insurrection in July in KwaZulu-Natal and parts of Gauteng. So can the ANC in these last 3 weeks regain that momentum they had while we're having by-elections? Because unlike other larger parties, they were slow out of the starting blocks when it came to posters, they were slow out of the starting blocks when it came to rolling out their campaign and spreading their message. But in the last few days, I've definitely noticed that the green, black and yellow socks have been pulled up and that they are hitting all corners of this country.
Today's meeting, Fikile Mbalula, head of elections of the ANC, having with members in Tshwane who've been unhappy with the list, concerned about political violence. Do you think that that could be potentially problematic if those those issues around the list are not sorted?
It wasn't just Minister Mbalula. You had, my understanding was it also included Deputy President David Mabuza. It included former State President Kgalema Motlanthe and Paul Mashatile, the Treasurer General. This is just by those people being in one city on a day with 3 weeks to go for the elections shows what a challenge the ANC is probably facing there. And remember, one of the reasons why the ANC came second in Tshwane in 2016 was because the branches were not happy with Toko Didiza being made the mayoral candidate. So we're seeing this play itself out again in Tshwane, and this is serious. There's 3 weeks to go before we vote.
What do you think is going to happen with the DA? They risk losing votes to perhaps the Freedom Front Plus and some of the smaller parties, some of the independents. But do you think they're going to hold on to their majority in Cape Town, for example?
Yeah, the Democratic Alliance had a very tough run when it came to by-elections again. However, that trend seemed, their chances seem to have improved as we've moved closer to the election. Obviously, they had a car crash of a week last week when it came with the posters in Chatsworth. And I do expect the party to lose votes to parties like the Vryheids Front Plus, the Patriotic Alliance in the south of Johannesburg. But I think they'll retain an outright majority in Cape Town. There are chances that they can win some municipalities outright in the Eastern Cape. And they will hope to turn that week, last week around them, to put it behind them and continue with the momentum, because they were the first party out of the starting blocks. In many corners of our nation, they were the first party to put their posters up, and they'll want to regather that momentum for the last stretch now.
Yeah, that Phoenix poster issue really did do a lot of damage. Those posters have come down now. I suppose we'll wait to see in the polls what actually happens. Talk to me about the EFF. They came third in the last local elections, I think, yes. They don't actually have control over any municipality. Do you think it's going to happen this time?
That is key for the EFF when one considers their growth trajectory. In the last, on the weekend, Julius Malema was all around the Northwest Province, one of the historic heartlands of the EFF. Of course, places like Rustenburg and Marikana. And it is important. The EFF has to do two things in this election. One thing, before I forget, is one of the stories of the EFF is that they had tremendous growth in KwaZulu-Natal in 2019. Now, I'm not saying they're going to take municipalities off the ANC there, but they will want to elect many more councillors after 1 November 2021, not just in KZN, but certainly in KZN and other parts of the country. The other key thing for the EFF is to, of course, bring the ANC under 50%. Be the second largest party in some of these municipalities and say, we have brought the ANC under 50%, and because we're the second largest party, we deserve to have the mayoral chain and show South Africans how we can do local government service delivery better than the rest.
I have to ask you a quick question about the IFP. I saw a massive billboard in Johannesburg, which is quite interesting. But also they're making the point that while they're fourth in terms of the number of votes that they've got, they are in fact third because they do run municipalities. They've had a change of leadership, though of course Mangosuthu Buthelezi is still very prominent. Do you think we're going to see growth for the IFP?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question about the billboard, because I do think we'll see growth in KwaZulu-Natal, certainly, but the billboard has Mangosuthu Buthelezi on it.
Yes.
So you have this new leader, Mayor Hlabisa, who had to introduce the former leader. And I think for many in the IFP, in an IFP context, Buthelezi is seen as this Mandela figure. We know that Mandela was still on posters in 1999 when he wasn't on the ballot, and it seems like the IFP is honouring its leader and putting him on their billboards and on their posters rather than the new leader, Mayor Hlabisa, who's going to have to work very hard to establish his credentials as the person who's going to lead the IFP to a very credible showing probably in 3 weeks' time.
Well, Wayne Sussman, I'm sure we're going to chat again in the days and weeks to come. Thank you so much for your analysis. Of course, Wayne is an independent political analyst. Let's focus